little bit of background. My first name is Todd Lau. My legal name, I don't like to use it because it came from someone very evil. And I have no military background. I tried to join, but the doctor said, no, we don't like what we found.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than that, I'm going to, speak from what I've been written. I'm here to inform the citizens are not bound to obey any unconstitutional law, and no courts are bound to enforce them. The federal government has no lawful authority to make any restrictions on our guns and ammunition. Yet year after year, Congress passes unconstitutional gun restriction laws with little resistance. There is no such thing as reasonable gun restrictions and background checks. All laws made by Congress, any restrictions imposed by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, any restrictions made by executive order, and all Supreme Court decisions that restrict firearms are unconstitutional. They are unconstitutional because there is no authority to do so. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any statute to be valid must be in agreement with the U.S. Constitution. Again, no one is bound to obey an unconstitutional law, and no courts are bound to enforce them. The Second Amendment is not the source of our right. Our right is given to us by our Creator. It is our natural right to defend ourselves, our families, and communities from attack. God gave us the right to defend ourselves, if necessary, without the need of approval from the federal government, especially since at the time that God really was paid attention to, back in Bible times, there was no federal governments. The Second Amendment merely recognizes that our right is to be free from any interference whatsoever to defend ourselves, our families, and our communities from attack again. Only 21 powers were delegated by we the people to the federal government. That is why our Constitution, is so short. Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1 through 16 are those powers. The U.S. Constitution is one of enumerated powers only when we, the people, ordain and establish the Constitution. We created the federal government. It is our creature. We are the creator. It is the creature. It is not our master. We must resist the tyranny coming from Washington and the tyranny forming at our state and local levels that would seek to restrict our ability to own and carry guns. The powers of the federal government are granted by we the people, and we the people never gave the federal government the authority to restrict firearms. Therefore, all gun restrictive laws are unlawful and unconstitutional. We must collectively ignore all federal gun restrictions. History has proven that universal registration leads to confiscation. Confiscation leads to extermination. Communist, Islamic, and fascist dictatorships are killing their citizens around the world every day without recourse or consequence. The leading cause of death in the 20th century was democide, death by government. The framers of the Constitution understood that arms are the only defense against a federal government that would seek to overstep its bounds. James Madison, writing in Federalist Paper number 46, said the reason the citizens, the militia, are armed is to defend ourselves, our families, and our neighborhoods, communities, and states from overreaching tyrannical federal government. All citizens and legal residents of the United States, by their presence on the territory of the United States, are subject to the militia duty, the duty of the social compact that creates the society, which requires that each alone and in concert with others not only obey the Constitution and constitutional official acts, but help enforce them if necessary, at the risk of one's own life. Letters of marque and reprisal, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. This gives the authority to Congress to authorize privately owned armed ships to make war on the enemies of the United States. An example of such was during the administration of Thomas Jefferson, where a ship was commissioned to make war on the Barbary pirates via a letter of marque and reprisal from Congress. Also, Congress did the same thing against the British. In 1792, Congress passed an act more effectively to provide for the national defense by establishing a uniform militia throughout the United States. This act required all able-bodied male citizens, except for federal officers and employees, between the ages of 18 and 45, damn, I'm too old, to enroll in their state militia, get a gun and ammunition, and train. I don't care, I'm 47, I'm going to do it anyway. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the authority to demand that able-bodied males be armed. It reads, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. The framers had no problem with the citizens being as heavily armed as the country's military. That is because they did not see themselves as our rulers. During the War of 1812, the federal government authorized privateer ships to attack British ships. Clearly, at that time, the federal government didn't have a problem with the average citizen being as equivalently armed as the government. That again is because they didn't see themselves as our rulers. Here's something about your gun license rights, as if there are any, legal that is. No state shall convert a liberty to a privilege, license it and charge a fee. There's another one, and that's according to Murdoch versus Pennsylvania 319 U.S. 105. You can look it up. There's another one. If the state converts a right into a privilege, the citizen can ignore the license and fee and engage in the right with impunity. That means you can ignore it and not bother with it. There's another one. Where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no legislation which would abrogate them, which means violate them. That's according to Miranda versus Arizona, 384 U.S. 436 and 384 U.S. 491. Lastly, the history of the federal government's unlawful actions to regulate firearms in America. From 1776 until 1927, 150 years after our founding, there were no gun laws or restrictions. In 1927, Congress decided we better start disarming the American people, and created a law prohibiting the shipping of firearms by mail. In 1934, laws prohibiting gangster weapons were created. In 1938, Congress legislated that gun dealers had to obtain a federal firearms license and maintain records containing the names and addresses of those they sold their firearms to. Lastly, restrictions continue to increase. Let's have no more talk of reasonable restrictions and background checks imposed by the federal government. Let's do something about them and stop them once and for all. Period. And I'm done. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And I have copies of pretty much what I just read for everybody. There's two very important documents that every breathing American, no matter what side of the gun issue they're on, should be reading. And should be paying attention to and should be obeying. It pretty much covers what I just said. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. I suggest carrying this around with you. If you carry a firearm with you, I suggest carrying this one with you at all times. So that way, if a cop has an issue with you carrying a gun, you show him. Here's what I do. First, you show him, pull out a pocket Constitution, show him the Second Amendment, remind them of that. If he still wants to make a big deal out of it, show him that, and show him the paragraph in there. I'm not sure if it's on this side or the other side. There's a paragraph in there that, says that right here. I think it's that one. No, wait. There's a paragraph in there that, right here, it's on the front. There's a paragraph in here that, he should read, mostly. It will tell him that if he pushes you, he continues to violate your rights, you could take his job. And if he sticks you into a courtroom anyway, show that part to the judge and you could take his job too. You could have them disbarred. You could have them fired.
some burgers there.
Yeah, have a burger.
Okay.
Make yourself at home.
Buns, there's condiments, lettuce and tomato and onion over there. International. Chili, just in case you want to check. Man, yeah. It works. Potato salad and coleslaw. I think I will.